We live? We good?
We are live, and
Rolling?
I'm
We're
going to add in
ticking?
the other Facebook groups here if I can find all of them.
Do not
There's so
adjust
many
your
of them, it's
screens.
tough.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Zack Kelberman and Scott Kennedy of the Huddle podcast. Chad Jensen, our normal host, my co-host, is out for this evening at a family or some sort of obligation. That's how he explained it to us. But he is unavailable for this evening, and it's Scott and I coming to you on a Thursday night, Mile High Mailbag, Week 18. Head-to-head matchups, Week 18, Broncos, Kansas City Chiefs, the final regular season Huddle Up podcast of the 2021-22 campaign. Good to see everyone. We'll get into some questions, some Teddy Bridgewater talk, Drew Lock talk, everyone's favorite subjects. We'll get to your comments and queries. But Scott, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Did a little Broncos for breakfast this morning. I'm excited. I'm excited about the offseason. I'm excited about the capital that this team has. I'm excited for the hope and change that this team could have coming, and all of the resources at the disposal of the Denver Broncos and George Payton.
Right.
So, it's kind of strange, but I'm built that way. I grew up an Atlanta sports fan in the 80s. Our teams were terrible. I looked forward to this process. It's how I got here where I am professionally.
Yeah, this is always an exciting time of mine personally, of the offseason. I love the rumors. I love coaching rumors, player rumors. We got free agency in March. We have the Combine in February. We have the Senior Bowl, which you'll be at. I think it's later this month, right? End of the month?
Yeah, it's like the 31st this year. So I think I'll be down there
A
the
little later.
31st, 1st, and 2nd, or the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. The Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday is when the practices are, when all that really matters.
It's going to be an exciting time in Broncos country. Hopefully, we have a coaching search to look forward to. We don't know that necessarily yet. Reports are still 50-50 as to whether Vic Fangio is coming back for another year. Some of that could be determined in Saturday's game. I'm not going to mess it up today against the Kansas City Chiefs. But you mentioned the resources the Broncos have to put a bow on that. $48 million in projected salary cap room and 11 total draft picks, including 4 right now in the top 100. That's
And Zach, if I'm not mistaken, the $22 million from this year rolls over. So you could be talking about $70 million in cap room, and you're hoping about 35 of that goes to a quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had the story today that a former NFL scout predicted that the Broncos are going to trade for Kirk Cousins this coming offseason, reuniting Cousins, of course, with George Payton. Cousins, though, has a $45 million with an M dollar salary cap hit for 2022, the last year of his contract. I don't know that George Payton will give up or take on that much for Kirk Cousins, but you're right. If it's Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, or a premier quarterback, they have a lot of money, and if it's not a quarterback, they can sign whoever the hell they want with that much money. They can draft whoever the hell they want. If it's George Payton's baby, and we think it is, he's the boss, he's in a good catbird seat in his sophomore season as Broncos general manager.
Yeah, I want to say hello to Doug as well, coming in with big stars. This is what I do in the background for these guys. Big stars coming in this morning.
Took me this while to figure that out, what you were doing with your hands.
Big stars. So, and this is say hello. Just say hello.
Yeah. That one I got down pretty easy. I was like, I thought you were air traffic controlling.
But Doug's coming with big stars today. So appreciate you, Doug.
Thanks
for the contribution. Yeah, we're talking, you're hoping a lot of that money goes to a quarterback, but let's say you even spend half of that money and you spend $30 million on a quarterback. You get Russell Wilson, you get Aaron Rodgers, and you're spending half of that money and you still have $40 million left over. Well, if you go down past the top 2 or 3 guys at each position, $10 million usually gets you a top 5 player. Can you imagine adding 4 top 5 quality players, top 10, even top 10, and put them through each unit? Put them through different units on this team. Woo! Like I said, it's going to be fun. You got draft picks. You got free agent money. Now, do you have the staff in place? Do you have the will to spend that money? Having that money doesn't do any good if you're not going to spend it, or you can't convince anybody to come take your money, because the last thing you want to do is overspend and be in a bad contract in a bad situation.
Well, we have to also keep in mind, George Payton, through one season as general manager, he's shown a proclivity to pay his own as well. So we have to also squirrel some money away for current players the Broncos might want to bring back. There's not too many extension candidates on the roster right now. They've pretty much taken care of who they're going to take care of, but I don't think he's cheap. I don't think he's frugal Scott George Payton. I think if he has the money, he's not going to blow through it. But if
No,
it means upgrading the team, I think he'll open the
for
pocketbook.
me, that's where the ownership situation comes in. Okay, because just
Yeah.
because you've got that, it's like, okay, I need $30 million for a signing bonus. That you got to get somebody to write that check. That's where the ownership situation comes in. We talk about this, and I don't think on the day to day the ownership really is that big a deal. I think you and I see pretty well eye to eye on this. Having Peyton and the staff and the players in place, ownership is just stay out of the way. But if I'm going to go after a big money free agent, I'm going to need somebody to say yes, and I'm going to need somebody to open up a checkbook, and that's where the ownership becomes a little questionable. Do you have? I'm not saying is Peyton going to hold this money back. I'm saying are the Broncos, as a whole, could that be possible?
Definitely, yeah. That's where ownership does come in, and hopefully the Broncos have that resolved sooner than later. But I was going to grab Michaela too. Thank you so much, Michaela. The Duchess coming in, as she always does, with a big showing of generosity. $49.99 super. Thank you so much, Michaela. Scott, she goes, I think main thing we need an owner for accountability. Problem is, like you were talking about, problem is the Bolin kids borrowed money against the value of the team, I was told. How does that affect finding an owner, in your
Unless
opinion?
they borrowed $500 million, it's not going to be a big deal.
Well, you never know with Johnny Bolin, the blood of Denver. He could have used the money for his escapades, but
even when we start thinking about like the size of space, our tiny little brains really can't picture how far away and big this universe is. And that's how the billion with the B's actually are. So they borrowed $20 million to go on I'm not going to say on a binge of some sorts, but whatever. They flushed it down the drain. $20 million against $3 billion sale price is nothing. It's nothing. It's like taking your $2,000 in credit card debt, which was weighing you down as a 23-year-old coming out of college, and rolling it into your first house mortgage, and it ends up being a 50-cent payment for the next 30 years. It doesn't matter. So that doesn't really bother me as much as long as there aren't legal ties to that. When you start getting the lawyers involved who have absolutely no incentive to come up with a quick resolution because they get paid $500 an hour, it takes forever. That is more of a concern for me.
one of my favorite sayings is it's all relative, and that applies to almost every facet of life. And it applies, like you were saying now, it applies now. They might have taken some money out or borrowed money, whatever, but like you said, Scott, when you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar entity like the Broncos, it's small potatoes. What they took out to how it's going to affect the franchise. But
you say, okay, are these guys? The Mannings are rich, they're wealthy. They're going to come up with $200 million. Well, $200 million against what 32 out of 6. That's 8%. That's not even a down payment. Of a $3 billion valuation. I'm not even sure my little brain is able to do that much math. That might even be right. It might be 0.8%.
I was going to say I'll take your word for it because I don't math at all. But Sam Bam hopping in here, $5 super. So good to see you, Sam. Thank you so much. Sam goes, just saying hi, go Broncos, in parentheses, hope Saturday isn't too bad. I'm still struggling with the Saturday game. I don't know why the NFL flexed the Broncos game, but bad is relative because if the Broncos lose, let's just, go out on a limb and say they're going to lose to Mahomes in Kansas City, better draft position and more of the chance that Vic Fangio and the coaching staff gets their pink slip. So I don't really think it's that bad if they lose the game.
The decision has to have been made. You can't say, okay, you're coaching for this one game, for a result. Now, you go out and Woody Hayes somebody and punch a player, that one game will cost you, but it's not the one game then. It's, your actions, but the decision has to have been made. You can't have it ride on this result because results are fluky. Results, typically the better team's going to win, and the Chiefs are a 10-point favorite for a reason, but you can't roll the dice. You're not spinning the roulette wheel on this one. You can't. The decision's been made.
I could see that being the case. I just think if he's on the fence at all, George Payton, you have the game in Denver. It's the season finale. Kansas City comes in, they blow you out. Second week in a row getting blown out by a divisional rival. How do you keep Fangio from that point forward?
If there's any doubt in the player's mind, they'll lay down.
The only bad in this game is if a player gets hurt. Thankfully, Patrick Surtain is not playing in this game. He has a couple, I think 2 calf injuries. However, the hell that happens to Lord Landau. But let's say, again, Javonte, knocking wood, he gets hurt. blows his knee out, that's the only bad from this game. But if they lose, it's more of actually a blessing than it is a curse. But we got Tom hopping in here from Canada. $5 super. Thank you, Tom. You are a legend in your own right up north. Appreciate you so much. Tom goes, in the Shermer presser yesterday, seems he regrets not starting Locke this year, guys. I didn't get that from Pat Shermer. I don't think he regrets anything. I don't really think he cares one way or the other. To me, he's as plain and passive as Vic Fangio is. Whether he has a job, whether he doesn't, it just seems like he's going with the flow. But I think based on today's press conference and the tone that Vic Fangio took, I just did a half hour ago or an hour ago, the Roughing the Kicker podcast. That's the podcast with the Chiefs writer Jordan Foote on the SI.com network. And we were talking about the pure distaste that Vic Fangio has for Drew Lock compared to that of Teddy Bridgewater. A couple days ago, Vic Fangio said about Drew, I think he can still be a quarterback in the NFL. End of quote, period. He said about Teddy today, I think he can be a great starting quarterback. He has all these great intangibles and this and that. It's just so one-sided. And I think they're both convinced of themselves that they made the right call going with Teddy and not Drew Lock. I don't really think they have that much regret.
We talked about that this morning, just about, one of the themes on here that I hear Chad say a lot is, at least you would have known. At least you would have known if you had played this. But they don't have anything to prove to us. In their minds, they already know. They don't need any more convincing. They knew coming into the season after a year of Drew Lock last year, they already knew, whether they were right or wrong, they knew they couldn't win and couldn't be a playoff team with Drew Lock a quarterback. They're not obligated to prove that to us. Tom, appreciate the super on that. And Travis coming in with some stars saying, evening, Zack and Scott, just ready for the offseason, the speculation until we find out the answers. It's one of my favorite parts of football, the draft and free agency. Mine too. I love, and it's one of the reasons, whether you like soccer or not, the general manager aspects of international football are absolutely outstanding. They're so much fun. There's a game called Football Manager, and because there's so much more player power, which makes it more interesting. It's like, oh man, Bradley Chubb's a free agent next year. I will just tag him. Well, that's kind of boring, There's so much more player power and mobility. It's a lot closer to baseball and free agency that way. But yeah, this is my favorite time of the year, especially when we're looking at teams, in the bottom, picking in the top 10 and the bottom 10, they've just been playing so meh since the 3-0 start. At about 3-2, it just seemed like, all right, I don't know, this team really wants to play for this guy. That was 3 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, covering the Broncos, this is annually my favorite time of the year when there's a potential coaching change or quarterback change, roster turnover. Figures to be a lot of that this year. I want to just make one more point about Drew Lock, and then we'll get to Teddy Bridgewater. We have a little bit of his presser we want to pull up. He had his last presser with the Broncos today. When I was on the podcast with Jordan earlier today, the Kansas City podcast, even he, Scott, mentioned the same exact talking point that Chad and I have, and you and I and Chad have for months now. At least if you would have started Drew Lock, you would have known one way or the other what he can be.
I don't have that feeling because, like I just said, they feel, and I think Peyton's part of this too. I really do. They think they know. They know. They knew. They don't have anything to prove to us. That you guys might still have doubts, but they don't have to prove that to us. So if you're one of these trust the coaches kind of people, which I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, they knew. They already knew. Now, whether that turns out to be right or wrong, only Drew Lock can tell us that over the course of the rest of his career, because we knew what we were getting with Teddy, and that's what we got. We got that with Teddy. We got average to slightly below average quarterback play, which was a step up from what you had last year.
Yeah, I just think it's so eye-opening that someone from the outside who covers another team can see how the Broncos have bungled their quarterback selection and just the overall bias they showed Locke versus Teddy Bridgewater. It's so glaring, and that's partly why outside fan bases, outside media think of Denver as nothing more than a laughingstock. And until Vic Fangio is gone, that's not going to change. But Scott, let's get into Teddy Bridgewater's presser. Let's pull up a little clip that we have.
Yeah, it was the title of the show. Teddy Bridgewater won a Person of the Year, or Great Person, or Nice Guy of the Year, or something like that. And one of the questions he was asked was, how have you been trying to help Drew Lock now, and what have you seen? since you have been on the sidelines?
I think Drew is found that love for the game again. Oftentimes, I was in the same situation before where it took for me to not be starting for me to find that love and that joy for the game again. And we talked, and that's just been the theme of our conversations. He's having fun out there. We love to see it. He's matured in so many ways. You see him protecting the ball and things like that. So, I'm excited that all of his hard work throughout this year is finally on display, and just going out there and getting a chance to compete.
Oh, sorry, fell asleep. But I had it. Don't you want to run through a wall now, Scott? I mean, good guy and all, and good teammate, but God, he's so boring. He doesn't inspire any sort of juice. But listen, guys, you don't take it from us. Take it from literally Teddy Bridgewater, who vanquished Drew Lock for the starting job. He has grown, number 3 has, in several different ways, and he's blossoming into his own. And even Teddy said, when you're a young quarterback in the NFL going through adversity, you're going to hit more valleys than you are peaks. You're going to go through more downs than ups. And Teddy took his lumps, and he went on to become what he is now, a journeyman starting quarterback.
Very rich man.
That's
very
right.
Rich man is what he became when Carolina lost their minds and gave him a $66 million contract.
But that's the whole point of what I was saying earlier. I mean, take it from Teddy. Let Locke develop a little longer in his career and then judge him based on that. His best is probably still yet to come. I don't think we saw the best of Drew Lock yet. I know we saw the best of Teddy Bridgewater, but we don't know. Once again, this is hopefully the last time we have to address this, but we don't know. And I think based on what Teddy's saying there, the future is looking brighter than many think for Drew.
Well, and to give Teddy Bridgewater some credit, I remember something that Drew Lock had said earlier. Said, what have you learned from Teddy was a question. He was going through, he's pointing things out to me in film sessions and doing this, and he said, kind of with a wry smile, he goes, "I've never had anybody like that before." So I think he came into the league with, was it Flacco who was the starting that was a quarterback? So
good times.
That was a vague shot at Flacco. When comparing him, a loose shot at Flacco, saying that he's not nearly the teammate that Teddy Bridgewater is.
Well, Scott, I know you probably didn't have both eyes on the Broncos in 2019, but Joe Flacco said, "I'm not going to be a mentor to a younger quarterback," and literally and figuratively turned his back on Drew Lock, wouldn't even acknowledge him on the sideline, so I don't blame him for having a better
maybe it wasn't that veiled a shot at Joe Flacco when he says, I've never had a teammate like Teddy before. Well, I've never had somebody to mentor, So yeah, I picked up on that pretty quickly without knowing what you just said already.
Well, think about that, though. He comes into the NFL, the quarterbacks ahead of him are Joe Flacco and Brandon Allen. The second year of the quarterback ahead of him is Jeff Driscoll, or he doesn't really have anyone he can lean on. And even so, Teddy is not the guy he needs to be mentored by. Teddy is the complete antithesis of the quarterback that Drew Lock is, but at least he's giving him the time of day. At least he's helping him out.
It's a little different because if you look at successful managers, a lot of them were backup minor league catchers. So Teddy has had to get by without having the raw talent and arm talent that Drew Lock has. So if he can take some of this is how I got here, these are the things I've had to do to make up for my deficiencies, that if you can do even better, you can be better than I ever was. So having Teddy around, I think, was probably a pretty good year for Drew Lock on the whole for his future. Maybe not this year, like Teddy said. It can be tough when you're a backup. It sucks. But I think Teddy will be super positive. Again, he came in his first year and wins this award. That tells you a lot about Teddy Bridgewater, the person and the teammate, even if he isn't much as a quarterback.
Nah, good guy, but not a franchise guy. Orange-colored glasses, that's a newer name, I believe, Scott. Don't recognize that username too often around these parts, but he wants to know. They want to know. I don't want to assume. Why does everyone assume Locke won't be a Bronco next season? He has another year on his rookie contract. He does, but look at how the Broncos have done him. If Vic Fangio comes back, he has no shot of playing at all. And even with the new coaching staff, they didn't handpick Locke. They didn't develop Locke. They don't have any investment toward Locke. If Nathaniel Hackett comes in and doesn't get A-Rod, for example, he's going to probably want to be on the selective process of getting his guy, whether that could be a Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral, anyone in the draft. So Locke may come back as a backup, but when you have a different coaching staff that has no investment in you, or your current coaching staff that has no faith in you, you're kind of craps creek.
Yeah, I think, and part of that, exactly as Zach is saying, is to a certain extent he's viewed as damaged goods.
Right.
And a fresh start somewhere else might be great. That said, a really good game against the Chiefs, and the way he's handling and working with his teammates and all the stuff that he's doing and showing his maturity, his biggest advocates will be in the locker room. It will be, his own teammates. So the thought process is just to reiterate what Zach says. If someone comes in, he may want his own guy. If someone comes in, he can't bring his own guy, he may want to draft his own guy. But Locke, again, he's the only one under contract. He's the only one that is under contract with the Denver Broncos. Out of all the guys we talk about, he's the only one that right now is a Denver Bronco in 2022. So he's got a shot for sure. And Miguel came in with some stars a little bit. And love you, Miguel. I think you're sitting at number 1 right now on Facebook stars. I can't bring it up, but I'd be hard-pressed to believe anybody has jumped you with the support you show in the morning and the evenings. But Miguel says, "Sup, fellas? What do you think of Kliss saying that benching Darby in PS2 is a sign Fangio thinks he's coming back?"
They're hurt.
Yeah.
That's why they're not playing. I mean, yeah, I think even Fangio's smart enough to realize when you have a player like PS2, why risk his future for a meaningless game? And same thing for Ronald Darby. He's the high-priced cornerback they went after. I don't think there's any signs. I truly, maybe I'm naive, I don't think a decision has been made yet on Vic Fangio. I think truly George Paton wants to see how they respond in this last game at home against Kansas City, and maybe has a rough idea of where he wants to go, but I just think the result of this game, one way or the other, could sway.
I think if there was a game, if there was a turning point, I pointed to it earlier, it was the Cincinnati Bengals. That was the one. That was the game. If you win that game, you can launch forward and you can make a run in the playoffs. You can save your job. You've lost.
This is also pretty true, too. I mean, Kliss is doing Vic Fangio. He's carrying the water for Vic Fangio. So I really wouldn't put too much into what Mike Kliss is saying right now. He's a great reporter in his own right. He has sources up the wazoo, but he's also doing the dirty work for the current Broncos coaches.
But Fangio did say if this injury had happened earlier, it probably would be enough to keep Surtain out for 2 or 3 games.
Right.
So
both calves, however that happens.
Yeah, I don't know how you do 2 of them unless you're cramping up in both calves, which happens, and you try and play through it and you strain both of them, which is possible. Sam Bam, I don't think we saw you coming in. Just saying goodbye. You did, because I remember you saying I hope Saturday isn't too bad. Coming through in it. And speaking of newer names, Jacob Foster, I feel like I recognize a picture, but I don't recognize a name. But thank you for the stars, my friend. Appreciate your support, and welcome to the show.
I saw a comment from Kenny that I wanted to grab here. Kenny goes, "Appreciate you hopping in with us tonight, Kenny Patterson. How long in the world can people like Jerry Jeudy be so supportive of Teddy Bridgewater at the start of the year? Whole season with no TDs. Our receivers have below average numbers because of Teddy Bridgewater." I put it out there after the last week's game against the Chargers. Cortland Sutton has more receiving yards in the last 2 games, both of which with Drew Lock. 93, not a lot, but more in the last 2 games than the last 6 that he had with Teddy Bridgewater. They're not conducive to what they want to do. I mean, they have no idea. They're putting square pegs in round holes all over the place. They have a dynamic offense with dynamic receivers they don't use, a dynamic backfield they don't get the most squeeze out of. So to answer your question, Kenny, in a shorter form, Pat Shurmur.
Yeah, I was trying to say, because I listen to this and I'm watching. I'm like, all right, are we going to blame Teddy Bridgewater for throwing short when then Drew Lock comes in and does the exact same thing, or do we point to a bigger cause? Maybe they're just following instructions. But then I went and looked at Teddy's career numbers, and they're pretty close as far as yards per attempt and yards per completion. It's Drew Locks that have come way down. So again, the phrase I shared with y'all in the morning, a good Southern phrase about having somebody with too much energy as opposed to that's lazy, it's a whole lot easier to put a bit in their mouth than a boot in their ass. So with Drew Lock, if you can rein in the mistakes, which now he's done, all right, now let's open the faucet a little bit more. I don't think he's had a turnover in these last 3 games. Now let's dial it back up a little bit and let him have some fun. Again, what you got nothing to lose. I know we were poking fun at that a little bit last night on the board. Nothing to lose. But for sure now, Drew Lock has absolutely nothing to lose. The team can go out there and play loose and have fun. Man, let it rip. Grip it and rip it.
Yeah. I just think coming up with the mantra of nothing to lose after you're eliminated from the playoffs is peak Vic Fangio. I'm sorry. But Boise Man hopping in here, $10 super. Good to see you, Boise. Thank you so much for your generosity as always. Come on, Lock, show out. Great season of fantasy this year. Just couldn't overcome losing McCaffrey. Bro, I lost Derrick Henry. I lost Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I lost Lamar Jackson. I was starting like Ramondre Stevenson at one point and Tyler Boyd. This year was not kind to me for fantasy, but I think Boise, I don't know if that was you versus Michaela in the finals. I know Michaela won, though. She's the champ of this year, but you did do really well. Everyone had a great time this year in the fantasy league, and he goes, Zach, I want to start and run an MHH Dynasty League for us next year. Could be epic. Boise, we'll talk about that as it gets closer, but I have no problem relinquishing my commissioner duties if you want to take that.
Being a commissioner is a pain in the ass.
It really is. It really is. I wear too many hats as it is, so if you want to do that, we'll definitely have a discussion.
And Lawrence coming in. So good evening, Lawrence. Appreciate you being here, and thank you for the stars. What up, guys? Cool to see you guys paired together. Yeah, Appreciate it is. Zach and I see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, and then we differ on several things, and we're both strong enough personalities. It can be a lot of fun. I think it can be a good mix because, again, when we're talking opinions, I'm never going to tell you I'm right. I'll tell you what I think, and then it's up to you to decide, and then we'll see whether we're right. So I have a lot of fun doing this show. I think this is at least the second time that Zach and I have been on together, and the first time had a really good time doing it. So appreciate you being here. But I'm kind of thinking Vic is using a scapegoat this offseason and coming back. That, to me, that is him interviewing for other jobs on the spot. Yeah, I had a lot of injuries. Yeah, we're talking about him throwing the quarterbacks under the bus, or the offense. This. To me, it sounds like instead of putting it on Drew Lock, when he's talking about the offense isn't finding any rhythm. I honestly think he's distancing himself from the blunder of the hire that was Pat Shurmur. So every time you hear Lock, when you hear offense, change that to Shurmur and see if it still makes sense, because that's where I think he's going with some of this stuff.
It's one thing if you want to scapegoat a coach that you had no hand in selecting, but you picked Pat Shurmur.
That's why I called it the blunder of his own hire.
You condone Tom McMahon. You pick the quarterback. I had a tweet today that every Broncos glaring issue can be traced back directly to Vic Fangio. Not John Elway, even though he picked Fangio, but not George Payton. Vic Fangio, it all falls at his feet. I don't think there's scapegoating anyone. I think George Payton, even, that was what I was talking about with Schefter's reporting earlier today when terming Vic Fangio as the fall guy if they fire him. I mean, how are you the fall guy when you're the culprit? You can't be the victim and be the suspect at the same time.
Yeah,
Vic Fangio is the suspect.
Can't blame the chef when you were the one who shot for all the groceries too.
Exactly.
And there's a certain kind of mantra I've thought of a long time ago. So people with talent have a lot of trouble making hires in their field because they take their talent for granted. You ever seen the really good basketball players or really good baseball players? They're not good coaches because they don't understand why people can't do what they can do, and they end up kind of hiring personalities instead of being able to spot the actual talent and coaching because they take it for granted. So if you look at this coaching staff, it's not good. And who made those hires? If you're willing to say that Vic Fangio is a very, very good defensive mind, then what I'm saying starts to make a little sense. He takes his being able to scheme and see these things on the whole, takes it a little bit for granted. And then he makes bad hires because he doesn't understand why people can't see it the way he does. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching on this.
No,
either way, he's made bad hires, and part of the job of being a head coach is picking the people around you, and you don't get one without the other, so therefore, got to go.
Incompetent is drawn to incompetent. I mean, how could you expect Fangio to rise above his own incompetence? It's impossible. It's almost like journalism. Let me just speak from experience. Going to school for journalism is a waste of time. I don't want to discourage anyone, but you either have it or you don't. And I'm applying this to Vic Fangio. You either are a natural leader of men as a head coach or you're not. You can't really learn to become one. And he's not proven to be that. He is the reason why the Broncos are where they are right now. There's no other finger pointing. It needs to come back right to Vic Fangio's face.
Well, and the phrase around good leadership is always try and surround yourself with people smarter than you. And
Failure.
he has struck me earlier in this year as basically petty and insecure. You're never going to do that if that's your personality. You're always going to try and have people around you that aren't going to challenge you, that you don't feel threatened by, that don't make you more paranoid. And it's the number one job, the two jobs for me for coaches, my two criteria. I know you're talking about a leader of quarterbacks who's going to develop the quarterback. My two are man management. Do these guys want to play for you? And two, who do you hire around you? Those are my big two. And he's a big F on both of those. F for Fangio.
I think my assumption was that if you can develop a quarterback, you can pretty much lead a team. If you have that capability, then you can be a head coach. But Peyton Chapman hopping in here, $4.99 super. That's a relatively new name. Maybe I have amnesia.
No,
tonight,
I believe so. So welcome, Peyton. Appreciate you being here.
Great first name. Appreciate having you on here as always. Or if this is your first time, welcome. I really want this young team to be successful because these guys work, but Vic and Shermer are holding us back. Yeah, big time. Again, I talked about this. Scott's talked about this. Chad has talked about this. Everyone who's watched the Broncos knows this is a playoff caliber roster. Take away even the quarterback in Teddy or Drew Lock. The rest of the talent on the roster is a 10-win caliber. And the only reason why they're not, and from my point of view, is Vic Fangio and Pat Shermer. It's not cliche at this point. I'm not beating a dead horse. I think most can come around to that consensus.
If Tampa Bay can win a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer as quarterback, the Denver Broncos can make the playoffs when there's 7 spots, and you just have to go 9-8.
I mean, literally, Jared Goff has been to a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo has been to a Super Bowl. Rex Grossman. There's been so many examples. I know it's a quarterback league, but if you have that truly elite level coaching, you can get by pretty far.
So, and Sam coming in, double dipping. Appreciate you,
Thank you,
Sam.
Sam.
Says, how much say do you think the players have in keeping or firing a coach? Do you think George Paton will consult some or a lot of the Broncos that are expected to be on the team long-term about keeping Fangio? I think he might test the waters a little bit. And if I was, I would have an exit interview with Von Miller, a longtime Bronco. Hey, what do you think about the you're on your way out, unload. What do you think? I would hope he did an exit interview with him on something like that. And the team has an indirect say with how they play, with how they line up and they play every week. And I think the first time I said it was probably week 5 or week 6. These guys don't look like they want to play for this coaching staff.
I knew it was over when the first Raiders game. When you lose to an interim head coach and you lose that badly, and then the Cleveland game, I saw the downturn. If Vic Fangio has Von Miller as a reference, that's not a good sign for Vic Fangio, because Vic's very first presser, he came out and started criticizing Von, saying he could be better. So, George, it would be smart. That's a good point, Sam. It would be smart to talk to the veteran players that have been around since 2019. Not necessarily the rookies, but the guys that have come up with Vic since he's been head coach and kind of got in the field. But even if he's well respected, what he does on Sundays, on game days on the sideline, that to me is the bigger barometer. So hopefully George Paton has watched the games this year.
And, I'd ask Kareem Jackson, somebody like that who might be a Vic guy. I would try and find, as
Both
part
sides.
of being a general manager is having it's basically like the intelligence business. You got to be a spy.
Yeah.
You want information coming from everywhere. Then you want to sift through it and find out who's trustworthy and who's not and come to your own conclusions. So yes, he should be tapping that in for sure.
A question from Manny Wise here, who wants to know, who would you guys want to take over the defense once Fangio is gone? Well, Manny, maybe Scott and I differ. I know Chad and I do a little bit about Vic. I don't see him being this Hall of Fame level defensive mastermind or guru. I think he's a very good defensive coordinator. I wouldn't even say great defensive coordinator. So maybe you'd want to look at one of his assistants right now on the current staff, or maybe on Brandon Staley's staff, because that's a Vic Fangio system. But anyone that can get production out of the defensive players, I don't want to rank 19th and 23rd in sacks and takeaways anymore. I want to be in the top 10 with that talent. When you have players like Draymond Jones, when you have Bradley Chubb, when you have Simmons and Bryce Callahan, Patrick Surtain, I'm forgetting a lot of them right now, and you have that much talent and you rank so low, that's unacceptable to me. Scoring defense is one thing, so whoever they bring in, I don't think Ed Donatel, I see Chase mentioning Donatel. I think he's going to go. He's so loyal to Fangio. He's going to go wherever Vic does. But whoever they hire, maybe Mike Zimmer, if they bring in a rookie like Kellen Moore, Nathaniel Hackett, they bring in a veteran defensive coordinator. Anyone that's going to get the most juice out of the squeeze. Scott, you would know better than I do. I don't think anyone was hailing Dan Quinn as a defensive mastermind in Atlanta or what he's done in his career. He gets to Dallas though, and look at the production.
He got that job for what he did with the Seattle Seahawks defense, which was part of what was happening under Pete Carroll, a defensive guy. But I think this defense is a lot better than you give it credit for. I think. It's not just the points per game. I get that because they play suffer ball, as I like to call it. When everybody's taking long drives, there's only so many possessions. The scores are going to come down. That's just basic math. But when you're getting so little help from your offense, it's deflating. It is. The best example I ever remember, I was 25 years old. I'm watching the 1998 Auburn Tigers. Their defense was freaking awesome. And they lost 8 games by 3 scores. Because come third and fourth quarter, they got tired of 3 and outs. They get worn down. And I think that the defense would show better if the offense would help them out at all. And the other part of that is if you look at a front 7 and a 3-4, your entire back 4, your 4 linebacker, your 2 edge guys, and your 2 inside linebackers has been decimated by injuries. Where would the pressures and the sacks and the turnovers be if Bradley Chubb and Von Miller were half of what we thought they were going to be this year? Half. So I'm willing to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but I'm also a Jimmy's and Joe's guy, and you got the most expensive defense behind you. They ought to be pretty good.
my thing is, though, even when those players were around, though, when there were no excuses, they still weren't getting turnovers. So when things are going perfectly, when the offense is scoring points even, the defense still isn't doing anything to change the complexity of a game. I mean, like you mentioned it yourself, highest paid defense, defensive mastermind at the controls. When is the last time the defense won a game for Denver? When is the last time Denver's defense stepped up in the clutch? I literally cannot think of that.
No, we mentioned a couple of pretty average quarterbacks in Trent Dilfer and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp and guys out there just wreaking havoc, winning games on their own. The Baltimore Ravens, who was a quarterback for that team that the Ravens won with that defense? It didn't matter who the quarterback was, but it was another guy. And those are the type of defenses you're talking about that are just winners. This is a hold. I think I asked this question before. If you're playing not to win, not to lose on offense, you're praying not to lose on defense. Where do the wins come from?
Tom McMahon. That's where they come from. Special teams. But we got 727 Mill hopping in, 499 super. Appreciate you, Mill, so much. He goes, hope Fangio and the crew are gone after Saturday. I don't like advocating for people to lose their jobs in this day and age, but if there's one guy who deserves his walking papers, I do think it is Vic Fangio.
When they get 7-figure payouts and they've made more money in 1 year than I'll make in my whole life, I don't feel too bad for them. And that's kind of what, and honestly, that's where, Fangio is. What do you think Shermer's bank account looks like? Hadn't he been a head coach twice by now? And you have 2 separate? That's 8 figures minimum. You're talking $25 million in contracts he's probably gone through already. They're going to be okay. Don't feel bad for them.
Yeah, don't cry for Uncle Vic. We got Mile High Kid 1, $10 super. Thank you so much. He goes, hey guys, if we get an offensive mind, do you think Vic Fangio's players that came with him from Chicago leave? Thanks for the show, guys. Well, I mean, who really came with him that you care about all that much? Maybe Bryce Callahan, but he can't stay healthy. Kyle Fuller can go with him. Who am I even missing? that tagged along with Vic.
The free agents, and there's some good names on this list that you're going to want to bring some of those guys back, for sure. But again, the core guys, the guys that you really want, they've got contracts. Where are they going?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
Take
gonna
care of him.
tie my roster building process to Vic Fangio or the players. If they want to leave with him, they can leave with him. I want players that want to play for the Broncos, regardless of the coach. So I think George Payton knows that.
Andrew coming in with some stars. Appreciate it, Andrew. Says, never advocating a loss, so let's go Broncos. Again, as you're watching, your heart will take over. You'll be rooting for the Broncos. The last game of the season, don't hold anything back. Best of luck to Locke, which we heard all season he's done in Denver. But maybe now, maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. I'm not convinced that he's done. He's cheap. He's got good tools.
Experience.
And he's under contract for a year. There's nothing to lose there. So unless he's causing a problem in the locker room, which we haven't heard a peep of all year, and if anybody's had any reason to complain a little bit, probably Drew Lock. He would have a reason to pop off in the media a little bit.
Just a little bit.
He's taken the high road. Anytime he's given the chance. So good for him. Maybe he's not done. Maybe he's not. So again, your heart will tell you, I want to win this game while you're watching. And then if and when Kansas City wins, your brain will tell you, all right, we're picking 10. I'm okay with that. We're getting a 10 pick out of it. I can live with that.
There's still not one Broncos player, past or present, that has come out and badmouthed Drew Lock. Not one. The closest was Jerry Jeudy, and that was more of a shot at Pat Shurmur. The thing about, I wanted to mention this earlier, I would bring him back as a backup for sure. I mean, that's a pretty good backup to have, but based on the way Drew is talking and based on the way he's kind of playing recently, he wants a starting job. I don't want to say demanding a trade, or he's going to demand a trade, but he's talking like he's not going to settle for a backup job. So the Broncos might have no choice but to have their hands forced and to deal Lock to a team that will take advantage of his strengths, hopefully. But
and if he does ask for a trade, he's handled it the right way. He went about his job this year, was a quality professional backup quarterback who got a chance to start and is doing all the right things, playing hurt, doing all these things. And if he says, listen, I want a chance to start, is it okay if my agent starts making some phone calls? George Payton would say, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And, to your point about your heart taking over watching the game, that'll happen up until the first head-scratching Vic Fangio decision or Pat Shurmur call, and you'd be like, forget these guys. I hope they lose. I can't stand this season.
And there's part of it where, what was the old line? Was it the Offspring song? The more you suffer, the more it shows we really care. Where you're just like, about the time that they go up 10 points, you're like, just blow them out. I don't even care anymore. Just
misery loves company, baby.
I'm gonna enjoy it. The old the masochistic part of it. Listen, I bring it on. I can take it. So again, just don't get anybody hurt, for God's sakes.
Broncos
Peter
football, catch the
stars. I think it's good morning to you now. And now it's Broncos for breakfast in Cambodia with Peter. How do the Broncos actually win this game? The wide receivers are finally playing better under Locke, but he hasn't got the OL to support him. I think offensive line is so much about your offensive line coach, strength conditioning, which shouldn't be a factor at this stage of their careers, and having the right guys. And I said it before, every time I watch the offensive line, that they are getting pushed back a yard every time. They get no push. It's hard. Where's the running game gone? It's gone into their backfield. That's where it's gone. Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon are having to make guys miss 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's tough. It is tough. So, there's not a lot of fear of getting in behind. That was one of the thoughts we had. Zack was like, okay, with Locke coming in, he should stretch the field a little more, but he hadn't been allowed to throw the ball downfield a whole lot. So they're just, and even in a 4 wide set, all the guys are inside the numbers. They run a bunch 3 right outside the tight end. It's like, man, where is the space out there? Spread the field. Use your playmakers. Instead, they're playing in a phone booth. It's hard to do anything in a phone booth.
Yeah, except become Superman. How do the Broncos win this game? Pretty simple. You have to hope that Patrick Mahomes ends up on I-95 caught in that traffic jam snowstorm. Regardless, I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle. Kansas City is still fighting for their playoff positioning. They want nothing more than to sweep Denver, at Denver, and drive the final nail through Vic Fangio's tenure as Broncos coach. And they're playing much better football than people give them credit for. That's why I never bought into that when they were struggling earlier in the season. Oh, the NFL figured them out. Mahomes is washed. No. He figured the NFL out once again. He's beating teams that are playing cover 2 shells now and trying to take away the deep ball. They're still putting up 35, 40 points a game. It's going to be a problem for the Broncos. Once again, though, I don't care what happens. Just no injuries, please.
Does it really matter?
Does it really matter?
Just as long. What matters is Monday afternoon. I think that's one of the questions we get. How soon could this happen? I think Monday by noon Mountain Time. You should know. You should know that should be the time.
Yeah.
I don't think anything will happen. I think George Payton is too classy of an individual, to make Lane Kiffin find his own way home like they did at USC. When he got fired, he wasn't allowed back on the bus. That's
the way
not
to do
funny.
it.
Sorry. But I think it'll happen on Monday. And ZW Designs, thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Appreciate the super and the support.
And we got 2 here from ZW.
Okay, there we go.
$1.99 super. Thank you, Zachary. Best name in the entire world. He goes, I want Locke because he brings so much positivity. Does that positivity mesh, though, with Vic Fangio and Saltine Shermer?
Well,
the answer is no, it does
move
not.
the next year. Those guys are gone. Can Locke take that next step? I mean, for all of this talk about Locke, he hasn't done it on the field. He hasn't. Last year he was a 31 or 32 quarterback. This year, he even his so far in 3+ games, his good games are okay. They're not, oh my God, I've got to have this guy. So we're still selling hopes and dreams on Drew Lock. He still hasn't shown it. So does that positivity translate to production? Because that guy can be the biggest ass in the world and you'll love him on your own team if he's throwing 4 touchdowns a game.
He's winning. Exactly. Winning cures all. But yeah, I just never understood the criticism that he was rapping or dancing on the sideline when he was winning. I mean, he loves the game and he's having fun about just playing in the game. Fans will find a reason to hate him.
I wasn't paying attention then. I didn't know. What was it? It's like, oh, it's unprofessional, or what was, who cares?
I never
let the kids play. Don't they say that in MLB? Let the kids play.
We got Nathan chiming in, $2 super. Thank you so much, Nathan. Hope you're having a great Thursday. Any favorite memories from the former Broncos defensive coordinator Greg Robinson's time, the late, unfortunately, former Broncos DC Greg Robinson? Nathan, I can speak for myself and say we covered this last night on the Huddle Up podcast, and Chad gave a great, I don't want to say eulogy, but a remembrance of Robinson's time with the Broncos. And also, I think Lance had the article for MHH, so I would recommend reading that.
Don't want to do that any disservice after they did it so much better.
Exactly.
Jose coming in saying hello from Joint Base McGuire in New Jersey. Go Broncos. We need Dayball in here. Stick with Locke as a backup to a veteran quarterback like Cousins, Rodgers, or Wilson, and demote Fangio to defensive coordinator. There are no demotions like that in the NFL. It doesn't happen. He's got a contract to be the head coach, and head coaches do not stick around to be defensive coordinator, nor would you want him to, because it would be a humongous distraction. He would have his loyalties in his own camp, and you wouldn't want him around. So not only is it contractually impossible, it's logistically, theoretically, all kinds of impossible. Won't happen. If he rehabilitates his career like a lot of these guys do, it will be as a defensive coordinator for someone else. But at his age, I'm not even sure if that's feasible, Zach.
Guys, look at me in the eyes right now, okay? I'm going to say this one more time. It is not going to happen. There is no way Fangio comes back as the Broncos
if Josh
DC.
McDaniels came in and kept Fangio, could that happen?
Why would Fangio want to work under Josh McDaniels? Like, Jim Harbaugh is another one. That was the rumor from Woody Page that Jim's going to come in and hire his old buddy to run the defense. And Vic, I mean, Vic's ego can fill this room I'm sitting in right now. There's no way he'd work under anyone. He wants to run the defense and be the head coach. So once again, guys, look at me in my eyes right now. There is no chance in hell that's going to happen. Okay.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
No, I'm telling you, there's no chance. And look at that. It's one of those doesn't belong. Cousins, Rodgers, and Russell Wilson. Let's find the one that doesn't belong there.
Well, you know what, though? If you looked at the stats this year, you wouldn't be sure. You'd know that 2 don't belong. The one that wouldn't belong would be Aaron Rodgers because he's so much better than the other guys.
Fair point. It's a fair point.
Boise double or triple dipping. I think double on this one. So, man, I love being commish. And, yeah, I'm the one that gets smashed in the finals. Second place isn't bad. I can see Locke getting one more year if a new head coach can't get a veteran and doesn't like the rookie quarterback class. Like we said, he's the only one with a contract. So it's right now your most logical quarterback choice for next year is Drew Lock.
Yeah, right now I think are the operative words. And Boise, you mentioned losing in the finals. I would take that versus I missed the playoffs by one game, and I had a loss by point 0.3 points to Chase Wellner. So I think my struggle is a little worse. But congrats making it that far in fantasy. It was a hard season this year.
I think I lost one year in the finals on Corey Dillon getting dropped for a 3-yard loss on his final carry in garbage time. I think I lost on one of those.
I would have retired from
But
fantasy.
Shane coming in and kind of reiterating what I was saying. So Scott makes a good point as far as evaluating players and coaches for Fangio. The reason Elway couldn't find a quarterback to save his life is he couldn't see how people couldn't live up to his talents and skills at the position. The first time I really had this theory was, I think, when Magic Johnson took a crack at being coach of the Lakers. And he was awful. People can't do what he can do. And he takes it. He takes a lot of those things for granted. I think I heard someone, I don't remember even who it was, but that an antidote came along. It's like, but coach, I can't do that the way you do. You just do this, and this. Was I can't do that. I'm sorry. I'm not you. So I think there's something to it. That's why I said it. But you take people with talent, take talent for granted. They just take it for granted.
One of the downfalls of Elway's quarterback evaluation was that he was trying to find himself in every quarterback. He was looking for his own, his self, his qualities, his arm talent.
I've seen maybe two since him.
That's what drew him to Drew Lock, though. He loved the big arm. He loved the gunslinger.
Drew's not on that level.
So it is a good point for sure.
The two, because we're talking about one of the greatest arms. The two measuring sticks I had always used for quarterback arm strength was John Elway and Brett Favre. And the one closest that I can think of since then that, and I haven't watched as closely the guys that are in now, for throwing on the run, it was Steve Young. Aaron Rodgers is in there, but, because Matthew Stafford had an arm coming out like that was that had the same type of zip and pop, and, they're splitting the webbing in guys' hands and they're having to tape up their fingers like you hear about Brett Favre. Was Elway and Favre, and those guys are just different. They're just different. Elway's making throws that other guys wouldn't even think about. I can't make that throw. Are you joking? Roll right and throw it back across left to the far hash, 60 yards downfield? No.
That's why we call them unicorns in this business. Aaron here likes your offspring reference, Scott. Fantastic offspring reference. Go Broncos. So
I think of that one all the time, though. The more we suffer. You go. I tell Zack and Chad behind the scenes all the time, and you've heard me reference it before. Y'all are so spoiled. Try being an Atlanta sports fan. You know what pain is. I was born in Cleveland, and I grew up in Atlanta. You want to talk about being a cynical SOB? You
were born in the pain and molded by it, Scott. Peyton hopping in. $1.09.
I was born in it.
That's right. $1.99 super from Peyton. He goes, Locke, thank you so much, Peyton. Locke gets to the huddle and says, good job. Teddy Bridgewater doesn't. The one thing I will say about Teddy is that on the field, vocally aside, he is a good leader. The players respect him. They like playing for him. They don't really maybe like his lack of arm talent. The receivers don't, but what I saw firsthand when we went to the Jets game for the MHH tailgate was that I watched Teddy the whole time, and he had the command of the huddle. He was always high-fiving teammates and just had the vibe of the offense. So I love the energy that Locke brings, but that's one thing that Teddy does bring to the table are his intangibles. And
you can't knock Teddy Bridgewater for his leadership and the respect that he commands from his teammates. That's his strongest trait, for sure. You're going to have to help me with this one. I think we say, mediocre. That's what it is. I had to read it out loud. I'm like, wait, what's that say? Once you hear it phonetically, I feel if Vic doesn't go, we'll have another go. We will have another got to be a mediocre team again, no matter who we get for QB. Well, you're not going to get a quarterback if Vic's the coach. You're not going to get anybody to come in. Yeah, you'll have to overpay for a guy. But there might be a reason why Teddy Bridgewater was the best you could bring in for 6th round and pennies on the dollar. Someone else paying 3/4 of his salary. For all the knock about Teddy was cheap. Teddy didn't cost you anything. Low risk, low reward. You got
Thanks, Carolina.
What you paid for. You got what you paid for.
Yeah, I agree though with the premise. That's what I'm talking about, and I'll say it again. The fish rots from the head. So as long as Fangio is there, the more of the same is going to last. Doesn't matter who you have. And I would say that the only way Peyton can sell Broncos country on bringing back Vic for a fourth year is if he responds with a superstar quarterback acquisition or elite offensive coordinator hiring. Even then, though, as long as you have Vic, you're always going to be capped as to what you can do. David Wilder hopping in with some serious. I'm assuming, Scott, if I can do it correctly,
got some stars. Just say hello.
Serious stars.
Say hello, David. Appreciate the stars. Want to make sure we give you a shout out.
We are at 55 minutes though. And we have the head-to-head we want to get to, Scott. The last one of the season, and you get to do the honors with me. We'll chat out
through our stars. Let me see if I'm missing anybody real quick. Leaf came in a couple times actually. So want to say honestly, the Broncos are nice guys of the AFC West. Yeah, the growing up, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and there were some bad boys out west that seemed to win a lot. In the Raiders. So the nice guys aren't really doing you a whole lot of good right now, are they, Leaf? Appreciate the super.
Remember what Aqib Talib said? Ain't no dogs on this team a few years ago, and he's so right. And there's still no dogs. They're all pussycats.
I had a coach say, you gotta have, when they talk about having some character problems on the team, so you need a couple of guys like that in the play. You need a little bit of thug on your team. Not too many, you'll lose the locker room and you'll lose it. But having a couple of those guys that are going to go a little crazy on you, having one or two of those is a good thing.
And what the Broncos have? A guy who shows his belly. That's their biggest thug. Is Quinn Miners. They just don't have anyone that inspires that fear, and they don't have it from their coaching staff. We know that for sure.
Yeah, and Jacob came in saying a win this weekend. Jacob Foster, appreciate you. I'm going to read this one because I can't find it right now because we want to get to the head-to-heads. A win this weekend would make living behind enemy lines a little more bearable. Oh, doesn't it really, though? I mean, familiarity breeds contempt. I grew up in Georgia around all of these Georgia fans. All my friends went to Georgia. Couldn't stand it anymore. And I'm over it now by a long stretch. But when I was in high school and college, man, I hated Georgia. Just behind the Georgia Bulldogs. So yeah, the familiarity breeds contempt, and being around that yeah, you certainly want to get that win. But let me see if I can bring up the head-to-heads here real quick. Let me share. And we'll run through these real fast. There's some green, there's some red, there's some black. It's very colorful. 7-9 versus 11-5. So
prepared for a lot of black on the Broncos.
Share screen. We see that okay? That looks okay, doesn't it?
That's good. Yep.
Okay, so go ahead and I'll riff off of you. You're used to going through these.
It's gonna be painful, but I'll do my darndest, Scott. Turnover margin, the Broncos are still in the upper half of the NFL with a +2, tied for 13th. They're averaging the fifth most TOP output per game, 31 minutes. And the Chiefs, though, right there are 7th at 30 minutes. It's not even...
That's come down, though. Didn't that used to be around 34? And it's come down because now it feels like every scoring drive against the Broncos is 17 plays in 10 minutes. It just feels like the other team has the ball forever.
They were completing more passes with Teddy because the passes were going 2 yards, so the clock was always running. But the offense here, look at that black on the Broncos side. Black means league average. So in yards per game, 19th, yards per play, 19th, points per game, 12th. That's surprising to me, actually. Rushing yards per game, 14th. I don't... Whatever.
How is 19.4 points per game 12th in the league?
I'm surprised at that.
Don't you think of 25 as like being about average in today's NFL?
Yeah, that's surprising to me. 19th in passing. Look at that, though. Tied for 5th in interceptions. They've only thrown 9 as a team between Drew and Teddy.
That was what they wanted. They got what they wanted. They're not turning the ball over. You're not moving the ball either.
And eliminated from the postseason for the 6th year in a row. Fumbles lost, tied for 17th. Giveaways, the Broncos are not giving away the ball, simply. That's the best they can do on offense. That's where they're in the green. 6th. Sacks allowed, 22nd, 39. And look at the Chiefs, though, with the rebuild offensive line and the supposed downturn of Patrick Mahomes. 5th in the NFL, only 27th sacks allowed. Third down, this is where they're going to get in trouble, the Broncos are, because they can't stay on the field and the Chiefs don't come off the field on third down. Number 1 in the NFL, 51.8% conversion compared to 37.3 for the Broncos. Red zone, I'm surprised Kansas City is that low at 14th, but not surprised the Broncos are 22nd at 56%. And if you want a case to fire Pat Shurmur, just scroll through the rankings there. That's the case.
Yeah, I don't think there's, going there. And you say it's league, the league average is in black. There's shades of black here as you go down, because 19th, that feels a lot closer to the red than it does to the green when you're talking about the averages. And even, like I said, the 12th, I'll have to bring that up. And we'll talk about it next week as we finish things up. But 19.4 puts them 10 spots behind, but that's, almost 10 points behind per game of the Chiefs. That's right. A ton.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 160 points difference. That's a ton of points. And there's a reason why, the big one up here, this one should be in green. This one should be in green, and this one has a chance to be number 10. That one might finish in red at 7 and 10. Going to the defense. You just wonder, though, on offense, if they didn't play the weak opponents they played, how bad would they really look? Everybody, the NFL, the parity in the NFL, everybody plays awful teams. I mean, there's just bad football going on. It's so watered down. The quarterback play across the league is so bad that there's a ton of bad football teams. But Scott, here, talking about defense, what I was saying about Fangio, I give the Broncos defense credit. They're a good defense, but people talk about them like they're the 2000 Ravens or 2015 Broncos, nothing even close to that. No. Look at these rankings on defense. This is the bread and butter of Vic Fangio. If there was one reason to advocate for Fangio's return, it's the defense. And look at the rankings here. 9th in yards per game, 16th in yards per play, 3rd in scoring, down from number 1, by the way. 15th in rushing, 6th against the pass, but again, you have the highest paid secondary. 14th in intercept, what I was talking about. 23rd in fumble recoveries, 17th in takeaways, 16th in sacks, and go down a little bit. 27th on third down. So on Kansas City's side, on offense, they're number 1. On the Broncos' defensive side, they are 27th in the NFL. When you're the highest paid defense and when you're a guru like Vic Fangio paints himself out to be, that is unacceptable to have these numbers. Thankfully, they're pretty good in the red zone. Bend but don't break, but... Well, and having done rankings, you realize that numerical rankings don't always tell the whole story, because look at the difference in sacks between 16th and 27th. The difference of 9 spots is 5 sacks. It's a third of a sack a game. A sack every 3 games is the difference in 9 spots. So there's really not that much difference here. Even though it says 27th versus 16th, the pass rush is fairly similar. And I use, Zack, a basketball reference when talking about this. If you want to talk about, if I'm Vic Fangio, I'm going to point, we had the 3rd ranked defense in the NFL. I used a basketball reference. There was no shot clock in college when I was a little kid. I know that seems like 100 years ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. The 3-point line and shot clock are actually kind of new to the college game, comparatively speaking. And you get a team that would come down and run a 4 quarters. They wouldn't score, but they'd run 3 minutes off the clock. Then they'd give up and someone would fast break and they'd go score. You're down 2-0. Rinse and repeat. You lose the game, but you didn't give up many points. That's this number right here. They play bend but don't break, but they do eventually break. They bend. You get 4, 5, 6 yards at a time. Aside from the Las Vegas Raiders game, you're not giving up very many big plays, but they're just inching their way down the field, death by inches, right, Zack? That's right. Little bit by little bit by little bit, third down conversion, score, and they maybe only had 4 possessions and a half, but they scored on 3 of them. And to me, this one's a mirage. Yeah. I know Nick's big on the efficiency rankings, and that's where it starts looking real bad, because points per possession is much higher than you would think based on that number right there. Yeah, that's special teams. Your favorite.
That's a really good analogy. One more point about the sacks, though, about the defense. You know, Scott, if you told me the Chiefs had 30 sacks, that's not their strength, is defense. That's actually kind of impressive. If you told me the Broncos only had 5 more, though, considering that's their bread and butter, I'd be like, that's not that good. So it's all relative. I love saying that, and it's one of my favorite expressions because it's true. It's all relative. You mentioned how that was a mirage. I mean, what's not on there, what's not listed are the fact that Fangio can't win a challenge to save his life, can't use a timeout to save his life. Those are the things that really impact a game more so than just an arbitrary number on a piece of paper. I don't want to do this right now, Scott, go through specials, but I will anyway because I love pain. I'm really surprised we see any green on Tom McMahon's side of the ball. I'm surprised Tom McMahon still has a job, but hopefully not much
net
longer.
Punting average when you're kicking it mile high, that should be high.
But literally, you'd think they would look at their kickoff unit. They're 32nd in return and 32nd in return against. You think maybe, guys, something's not working here. It's been at or near the bottom for most of the season. 19th in field goal percent. I don't know how that's possible when you have McManus seemingly drilling everything.
40 yards. 40 yards a return, my God.
And look, comparably, 19.9. It's more than less than half, however I want to frame that.
Well, I mean,
half
just look at the difference between, we talk about hidden yardage in games and how that makes a big difference. This isn't hidden. That's 22 yards a kickoff and field position difference between Deontay Spencer and whoever the hell you're kicking the ball off to if he doesn't kick it through the end zone. At 40 yards, you're better off just shanking the thing out of bounds. I think they get the ball on the 40, don't they? At least you're only going to give up 40 yards. Oh, good Lord.
The Broncos punting average could go down because Sam Martin could be out on the CV list, and they actually worked out, guys. You might not know the name, Scott, but Colby Wadman, the punter from a couple of years ago, he actually worked out for the Broncos, and it might be Colby Wadmania on Saturday at Mile High. So can't wait for that. But Dave Taub, the Kansas City special teams coach, he was up for the job in 2017 that went to Vance. He is one of the best special teams guys in the business. A quick little aside, when, not if they fire Tom McMahon, I would pluck someone from top staff to run the special teams. But penalties here, surprisingly, the Broncos are 5th with only 77 committed. I don't know, that's not accepted though, right? It's just committed.
It would be accepted because it wouldn't count. You look at the end of the day, you say 3 penalties for 15 yards or, whatever. So if they were declined or whatnot, then they wouldn't count on this. But yeah, it's a sign of a well-coached team, very well-disciplined.
I was just going to say, you see why stats are not the end-all, be-all, why you can't form narratives, because that is exactly right. You always look at penalties, and a team that has a lot, for example, you say they have no discipline, it starts with the coaching, and there's some truth to that, but you're going to tell me that Kansas City is ranked 24th, they have bad coaching? No freaking way. Just because the Broncos are 5th, they have good coaching? No freaking way. This
team does not turn the ball over and does not commit penalties.
They're saltines. That's all they are.
Yeah, they don't take any chances. They don't take any risks. It's saltines. My son loves saltines. So he goes through a sleeve of them. I got to give him a gallon of water too, or I won't see him again for a while. So the saltines, I don't know. Tapioca pudding of desserts.
Yeah, it's might be giving Pat too much credit, but that's gonna do it though for the Huddle Up podcast, guys. I think we got to everyone, Scott. We don't have any supers left.
Yeah, if I miss you on stars or whatnot, we'll make it up to you. We keep a good track of those, so we will. We're on here a lot, so we'll be back tomorrow. We'll make it up to you, I promise.
The Huddle Up pod is coming next to you guys after the game on Saturday evening against the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll have the gut react. I believe we're doing the gut reaction on Saturday. Chad and I.
It should be. Yeah.
Say last one of the year. So we'll see you guys then. In the meantime, be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. You can follow the main account for all your Broncos news, analysis, information, rumors, transactions, breakdowns, and more at Mile High Huddle. You can follow Scott on Twitter at Scout Kennedy. You can follow myself at Kelberman NFL. If you haven't, guys, go to huddleuppod.com. Scott's not wearing any Huddle Up gear because he hates us, but we have a beanie, we have hoodies, we have coffee cups, we have everything you need in your collection at huddleuppod.com. Go there right now. Check that out. Also, facebook.com/milehighhuddle. Hit that big blue button. Become a supporter. $5 a month. You get instant access to Kelberman's Corner, Broncos Book Club, and Trickle Zone. I promise it's worth every single penny, and facebook.com/milehuddlepod. Like that page. Follow that page. And if you haven't, guys, if you want a beanie, hoodie, maybe a shirt, each and every month we give away some gear, but you have to leave your football priest a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts for that to happen. We love to read them. We love to see what you guys are putting in there. Keep it going on Apple Podcasts. But if you can't do any of those things, we totally get it. Still love you, still care about you. Just do these 3 things, please, please, please. Subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. Helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you. Do we have we're not going to do a rundown, Scott, on the Facebook?
No, we do. I don't have access to the back end of Facebook for this. Just want to remind everybody that tomorrow night we'll be back. I'll be in the background for Friday. It's Dove Valley Deep Divers. So we'll be hopping in there tomorrow night. And then the game on Saturday, the last game of the year.
Thank God.
And then Sunday and Monday, we should see some fireworks.
Then the fun starts. We'll be back on Saturday, like we said, after the game for the gut reaction. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Have a great Friday. Have a great start to your weekend. Take care. And as always, guys, go Broncos.